Hi, I'm Rita van Rooyen and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk to our expert, Robin Hay from Hay Attorneys, and she has been helping me with all my commercial law terms and conditions and contracts. And she's going to be looking and helping and going through all of these contractual things that we are signing up for now as we start going through and becoming part of this NSFAS direct payment system pilot. I have done student accommodation for the last 4 years, 5 years. I've done student accommodation all over the country, working with more than 13 different institutions, TVET colleges, universities, and we have accredited more than 50 properties over the years, either through universities or through NSFAS and their direct payment system that they're implementing now. We are in the pilot of that system and it is going a little bit crazy. Things change on the fly. Things, the systems, the processes, everything evolves. But at least we are part of the NSFAS STARS team, and we can at least have a voice and bring all the troubles and problems and provide solutions to those at the NSFAS STARS team. So very excited to be a part of that, and I hope you're going to learn something from these videos, and Robin's advice will help you a little bit as we go through those terms and conditions that you're signing up for. If you want to get my book, you can get it on my website, retavanrooyen.com. I've decided also for the first time ever that, with all of this uncertainty around accreditation, that we will start to help landlords as well now to accredit their properties as a standalone service. Whereas in the past, we would do a lot of just management and helping people to manage their students and so on. We decided we will help you with your accreditation. So we can do an inspection of your property and we can tell you, okay, you need XYZ at your property. And to get like an A grade or whatever, obviously we all want to get an A grade. So how to get an A grade, we can come and help you and do that inspection for you. And then, of course, we can submit the accreditation on your behalf. We can do a whole lot of things around that. And we can also do a project management for you. So if you're new and you just want someone to help you set everything up, get your accreditation in place, project manage your suppliers, your conversion. We can advise you on how to make the best use of your facilities. We are more than happy to come and do that. You can head over to my website to get a little bit more insight into how we do all of that. Well, let's have a chat with Robin. And this is a series and it's in two parts. Part one is talking about the NSFAS terms and conditions for accreditation. And the other one is your lease agreement that is auto-generated and is binding between you, the student, and NSFAS, basically. So we're going to go through all two of them in quite a lot of detail. So get a pen and paper ready and to make your own notes. And I'll also show you where to get the actual documents from. Well, it is the anticipated automatically generated NSFAS lease agreement video. And we are going to take you through what you are signing up for with a student whenever you have a NSFAS student in your property. I'm here with Robin Hay, and she is going to be our resident expert in taking us through that lease agreement, and we're going to be discussing a few key points. I'm not going to go through line by line on the whole lease agreement and explain everything. However, we are just going to touch on some points where it's different from your normal type of rental agreement that you would get versus this one that NSFAS is generating on your behalf. So, Robin, welcome. Do you want to quickly just do your intro again for us?
Sure. My name is Robin Hay. I'm a commercial lawyer with 20 years of experience. I've had the privilege of working with Rita over the last year or so, dealing with both commercial, lease and corporate matters. And it's great to be here today to have a look at the lease agreement and to advise business owners on the risks and the rewards that they can get via this kind of setup. So thanks for having me.
So, here is the lease agreement. So I think that the important thing actually on this lease agreement, the first of all, is that you can't download it from the portal. I hope we've asked them to put a download button on there, because I know the first thing all landlords want, obviously, for the bank, if you want to get your funding done, is to um, you know, download your leases for them. And that's not possible at the moment. So definitely a change that we have applied to via the NSFAS team that we are a part of. Um, Robin, I think the first part of it is all kind of standard. I think the important thing for me here is your lease period, which is 10 months. And then even though the start date, which is auto-generated, whenever this thing gets auto-generated, but at least the lease period is 10 months. But what if that 10 months is not the same as your start and end date? Does that matter? Or what is the start of these 10 months then?
No, it does matter. So what you would have to do is have a look at, you've got here the 12th of April to the 30th of November. So you would have to make sure that that 10-month period corresponds with the dates that are in that block.
Yeah, because the challenge is that landlords don't generate this. This is how it's generated by NSFAS. So that I think is another little bit of a challenge here in this.
Yeah.
At least I must say that these leases were created late, obviously in April only. But they have paid from Feb, so they backdated it to February, to the beginning of these 10 months, which I suppose is good news, but still these two should really align.
Yeah, they should. But I think, as you say, that's an auto-generated lease. It might, I mean, it's confusing, but you'd just have to deal with it. You know, the actual date that the student moved in would be, I mean, it would be hard to argue if the student is there for 10 months that they're not entitled to be there for 10 months because the lease says 10 months. So you would be able to go to court, and if you had to, they could take you to court and say, look, we need to apply for something called rectification, which is really there was a mistake on the agreement. So I don't think that is fatal to the agreement.
Okay, cool. And I do, whenever we uploaded the students, we had to say from when did they move in. So we put it in as obviously February when they were supposed to move in. But yeah, this is just the date stamp, I think, of when the actual contract was created.
Mm.
All right, cool. I don't think there's anything in the definitions that looks really weird, unless you see something I don't see.
No, all good.
Cool. Maybe before we go into the detail, Robin, what would you say is the top three things or the top things that people should be aware of and look out for, or be, yeah, I don't know, scared of in this lease agreement, or the differences between this agreement and a normal rental agreement?
Yeah, so the first thing to note is that a lease agreement is always overridden by two things, the Consumer Protection Act and the requirements of the Rental Housing Act. So whatever's in the agreement, unless it is more onerous than those acts, will be, if the act says something and the agreement doesn't correspond with that, the act will take precedence. So that's the one thing. So you've got to know your rights in terms of those acts and make sure that you understand what your liability is on that side. So that's the one thing. The second thing is that you can't take a deposit, which means your security for any damages to the property, your security that you would normally have with regards to a residential property is just simply not there. And the third risk that I would definitely consider is that your tenant is a student. Your tenant, you know, your ability to claim damages, to deal with any kind of, damage to the property or anything like that is severely limited. Especially if you look at the agreement with NSFAS, you'll see that you indemnify NSFAS against any claims for damages, which means your only real claim is against the student.
All right. Thank you for that, Robin. I think let's go through the document. I did highlight a couple of items in here that I think from an operational point of view that has me concerned. And yeah, let's see what we can do about those. So at least the one thing, but we still ask for proof, okay, is that the lessee, so the student, warrants that they have a valid and current bursary agreement with NSFAS and that they are registered with an institution of higher learning. And I think so. Normally, when we start taking in students into private accommodation, it's long before, sometimes before they registered, some definitely before they even know that they are definitely going to get money from NSFAS.
Sure.
So that is a very interesting one for me, and that would also make sense why these leases are only created in April, once the funding decisions has been finalized, why the um, and also after registration. So that lease is only generated when a few things happen. Number one, you are accredited because you've given all your detail from a property point of view. The students have applied and they are eligible for funding, and the university has uploaded their registration data. And then all three the parties really agree that, yes, this is a real student, a valid student, and then that lease only gets generated. So it doesn't get generated just because you and the student agreed that it should be, you know, they should be there, or it's fair, or a lease, or whatever. The university must also agree. And that also takes quite a bit of time, which is, so you're kind of at risk really until you have this specific lease agreement, which will probably only be generated in April.
Yeah, I think as we go through the agreement, you'll see a couple of protections in that regard, but it is something to consider. And yeah, you are at risk for at least a period. You have a common law lease that would run through, but if they are never accredited or they're never registered a higher education institution, let's go through the agreement and you'll see what the outcome of that is.
All right, perfect, cool. Um, so under rent and payments, I think that was quite nice because there it says the rent will be paid monthly. And they also, even though it doesn't mention it really specifically in here, but it is a month in advance. So at the
Okay.
end of May, yeah, which is really awesome. So at the end of May, you're going to get your money for June once they start paying. But to get them to start paying
Yeah.
is a different story altogether. And then it just says that you have no recourse against the lessee for any default in the payment of rent by NSFAS. So if and I mean I can give you so many examples of where NSFAS didn't pay and what happened. So let me tell you a story in PE this year. In June, end of June, after the whole first semester, most of our students that were with the universities haven't been paid yet. And our landlords then said, listen, we want a letter. Well, two things happened. Number one of the landlords went with the private residents association in the area, and they decided they're going to cut water and electricity and Wi-Fi to the students because they haven't been paid. Yeah, technically you can't do that. Even in the
No,
normal rental act, you can't do it. So
no,
that was a
no,
problem
no.
in the first place. The second one is that they then asked, and they said another scenario, different landlord. They want letters to be written to the students saying to them, listen, you can't come back after the holidays until we have been paid, which is actually technically also not right. So, and I
No,
think
you
that's
can't do
sort of what
that.
NSFAS is trying to prevent as well, because you get these situations. But if they just paid, it would solve all of it, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I think the biggest difficulty you've got is that NSFAS is part of this arrangement. So you're really beholden to them, and they've really restricted the kind of relief you can get. So, you're relying on somebody else to come in and make the payment, but you can't really kick anybody out unless the payments have been made, and you're limited to your recourse, and it's yeah, it's not a simple arrangement, and NSFAS doesn't pay on many examples and many media stories around this and around the impact on the students and the landlords.
Yeah. Right, let's go back. And then they're talking about the deposit again that you mentioned, and they don't have to pay a deposit or any other form of payment. Now, we discussed this in the other video as well, but that could also mean that they're not allowed to pay top-ups. So if you think you're going to charge more than what the capped amount is, you technically can't, because it specifically says no other forms of payment, which is really very broad.
It's very broad, and it says in connection with this agreement. So, you can't ask for a separate payment arising out of the lease arrangement. So it's very broad.
So it has to be for if you're going to charge anything additional or extra, it's going to have to be yeah, I
Divorced from
suppose
this
it's going to have to be
agreement. Yeah,
completely different. Yeah, that's not due to a lease agreement.
yeah.
Okay, all right. So yeah, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see these big players, the purpose-built student accommodation guys. I don't think that they can make their margins and their profit like they should, because they have a lot of overheads. They had a lot of expenses to build the property and so on. So I really would like to see how they're going to handle this situation, because I don't think that they can't afford not to do top-ups on these rates. And I know that they are currently pushing in the NSFAS STARS team and discussions with NSFAS, and I don't know if they're going to go to court eventually to see if they can get that cap increased. The problem is that obviously NSFAS has a limited budget. So if they increase the cap for some students, it means others can't be funded, which is where the pool for lower amount, more students really come from.
Yeah.
And NSFAS is always saying, listen, we don't need a hotel. We just need functional accommodation. Okay, so this they may not get someone else to stay there if they decide in the middle of the year they're going to leave, and
Yeah,
then
that's right.
and then NSFAS still pays for them. So I want to, again, a story. I like my stories. Okay, so so there were somebody that told me in Potch, they had a student that got a bursary, and they got a space in their accommodation, which was very beautiful space, single rooms, apartments, everything beautiful, right on campus. And the student then figured out a way to bypass the security that they had there, and they were renting that apartment to someone else, and they moved to free accommodation, or a much lower cost accommodation. And this other student, which they then technically got for free, the landlords got their money, and they were basically subletting that apartment. Yeah. So they're not allowed to do that. At
Yeah.
least it doesn't say they're
No,
not going to do
no,
it,
they're
but they're
not.
not allowed to.
No,
All right.
they're not allowed to.
The general duties, I think I would like to highlight just one or two things here. Clean, tidy, and livable. So for me, that says the lessee must do that. So the student must keep the property clean, tidy, and
Yeah.
livable.
Yeah.
So that then means that me as a landlord, technically, I don't have to provide a cleaning service, isn't it? They must do it. It's their responsibility.
Yeah, where there's a common use area or an area that's specifically that is specifically for the landlord's use, you would have to clean that. And you'd have to, you'd provide a cleaning service you know, for like hallways and things like that, but you wouldn't have to provide a cleaning service for the actual rooms that they are in.
Yeah, listen, I'm never going to say don't clean your own property. You need to, because as much as
Yeah, absolutely.
they might keep it clean, they're not going to do it that a deep clean which is needed.
Mm.
And then if you get that unannounced inspection and the place is filthy, then yeah, you're going to be in trouble with your accreditation. So
Yes,
you either need to
exactly.
inspect it, and we do a combination of things really. I've got once a week someone that'll go in, do a deep clean of the bathrooms, kitchen, whatever. And the rest of the time, we have a cleaning roster where the team lead in the house assigns people, and then the students have to just keep the place clean and tidy the rest of the time. But for the sake of your own sanity and investment, just get a cleaning team anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. The other thing that students like to be are nuisances. So they're not allowed to cause or commit any nuisance on the property that'll cause annoyance or discomfort. So if you have, and we have this a lot, where half the students want to party and make noise, and the other half wants to study and, get good grades. So this is really what they are signing up to. And I think it's also important to take them through what their duties are according to what NSFAS has in their lease agreement. Because remember, the students probably also didn't see this. This
No,
thing's
they haven't read it.
auto
Yeah.
generated. So very important. Print this
And
thing out and take them through it in your house meeting in the beginning of the year.
and also make sure you've got your house rules, and your house rules are strict about what constitutes a nuisance. So here it says a nuisance, any annoyance or discomfort to other NSFAS funded students or occupiers of the building. So, it's quite broad, which is good. In this case, it's good.
Broad sometimes, as long as it works in our favor, it's good. All right. Cool. So I think that is sort of the rest is very standard. And if there's these blockages and obstructions, um, it doesn't say they talk about you can't charge anything else, but if they break something, if they block a drain, if their rooms are so filthy that cockroaches are climbing underneath the door and you have to go in there and clean, um, we can still charge them for that, right? It doesn't mean that clauses that says
Yeah, it would be
we're not permitted.
no, that would be damages. You would be entitled to claim for that.
Okay, awesome. I think that is the important part that we need to know. And I think also as these damages happen, us as landlords are going to have to be on top of things. The moment it happens, you're going to have to charge the student and they're going to have to pay for it because they don't have deposits anymore. So you're not going to have that luxury to kind of let it go to the end of the year and just, or whatever, take it off the deposits at any point in time. We're going to have to be on top of that all the time.
Yeah, and I think you are going to get pushback in the sense that the not being allowed to charge any amount arising out of this lease is very broad, and the unintended consequence of that may well be that you would have a fight on your hands for charging the students any additional amounts, including amounts for that they have caused. But the natural implication of that would be that you would be entitled to charge for damages. But this agreement's not great. It's not perfectly drafted. So, you'd have to take your chances, really.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that landlords also like to do is for disciplinary procedures or whatever, they would charge fines, right? So again, that is something now that you have to have in your house rules and get them to sign that as a separate agreement that they will abide to the rules and the fines that might be levied. And other things as well, like if there's a friend and you allow sleepovers and you charge for that sleepover. I know there are people that do that. You probably need a separate agreement to cover sleepovers and things like that. So you can't rely just on this specific lease agreement, I would say.
Well, when you do your house rules, you have to submit your house rules to NSFAS when you are doing your accreditation process. So that would be the opportunity to assess the rights that you have. So that'll be quite interesting, especially for the bigger guys.
And I think if you submit those house rules and all of these things are in there and they don't dispute it and they still accredit you, then surely you can argue that they've accepted it, isn't it? Maybe? Am I
Yeah,
taking a
it would be
chance?
in your favor. It would be in
Yeah.
your favor, yeah.
Okay, cool. So if whoever's listening, make sure that you have house rules that you sign and you submit to NSFAS. Okay, then it just says here that you obviously make sure that they must acknowledge that everything is in order, and they must let you know within 30 days of the lease start date if there's anything that needs to be fixed, and they are going to start reporting their maintenance queries and complaints on the portal, which is going to, in the past, I think, and for me, this is not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing that all the slumlords and it's a double-edged sword really, because on the one hand it's good because it's all the slumlords, all these people that have always gotten away with really bad situations and have done really unethical things on properties where students are living. I think all of that is going to become visible now on the portal, and it it has real consequences for those landlords that they can lose their accreditation and their income. So that's the one good part. The other part, though, can also be a big annoyance because sometimes students, you explain something to them and they'll still complain and they still won't accept it. And, they will go and put those complaints on the portal, and then you're going to have to deal with the fallout of that now as well. So as much as we want to keep students happy, sometimes we can't for the, good of everybody. So I'm also waiting to see. They haven't started to use that really yet on the portal in the pilot, but I am quite interested to see how that's going to evolve over time.
Yeah. Let's see.
Right. Okay, and then you carrying out of work, so you can, on a mutually agreed date, you can go and inspect and do repairs and so on. And it must have a minimum interference with the student, and the lesser may not cause or allow any major building works. Okay, so it's broad again, because what is major building work? But it's only allowed to be carried on for 1 week. So I don't know if you do major building work, like maybe change there's something that I would call major work, which is one of our bathrooms that I want to split, and instead of one big bathroom, have two smaller bathrooms. But that would be a major work. But even that is
Yeah.
not going to take 1 week. So this 1 week and major doesn't really go together for me. But I suppose, it's just something to be aware of. What I am doing, like
Yeah, it's very
in
broad again.
Bloemfontein, Bloemfontein, we've got a situation where the students asked for extra windows, and it does make sense. And it's going to prevent mold and things like that. So it's actually my benefit as well. So whenever we do something invasive like that, it's maybe not major, but it is invasive because there's going to be dust and people in and out the room and so on. So what we do in a case like that is I do a letter and I get them to say, yes, I'm aware. It's going to, this is what is going to be done. I agree to it. And, you can go ahead. That way, at least you're covered. In case there's anybody or something that happens, you have that permission almost from a student that you can come and do that invasive type of work in their rooms.
Yeah, and then both of you would have to sign it because it would be a variation of the agreement. So both of you would have to sign it.
Ah, I like that, Robin. You see, that's why you're the clever and pretty one in this relationship. Because, yeah, because I like that, a variation. So, mental note, I will ask you sometime to create a template for us for all of these little variations, that so that it has the right wording in it, to have that, yeah, to make it a formal document, really. And then the nice thing here is at least it does say if there's any emergency work. So then you're going to give immediate access. Maybe I think also it'll be good for you as a landlord to kind of define these things in more detail that you put in your house rules or some other document to say this is major work, this is an emergency, this is immediate access. Just to kind of just limit it or make it more specific, I would say.
Yeah, and I think when you do that, you need to work with somebody who understands house rules. So I would definitely get an attorney involved, and preferably an attorney that's got a lease background, who understands things like policies and procedures and house rules and things like that, who's got experience in that regard. It's worth the investment, and it will save you money down the line if there's clarity in what's expected.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And then it talks about your rules and policies. So it must be reasonable. Again, what a student think is reasonable and we think is reasonable is like maybe two different things.
No.
But yeah, I think just unreasonable is like 8 o'clock. I lock the door and nobody's allowed in or out. I think that is unreasonable. But I think that anybody that's been in or that has a teenager or has been in student accommodation at least should know sort of what that reasonable means. And I think then they just
Sorry,
talk about
Brett,
some,
and again, that would be part of what's submitted in your accreditation process. So that would also be a a process that would determine how reasonable your rules are. So that gives you some comfort, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why they want you, I suppose, also to submit your rules. So if they feel like it is unreasonable, then they can come back and tell you to change things, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right. And then these rules that they want you to cover is definitely security, which is obviously very important because we don't want to compromise any security of the students because yeah, criminals do target students. That is a fact.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and then the driving of vehicles. Not that I've only ever had one student with a car. Maybe that I think it's maybe just us, but and then the common amenities. So what are they allowed to do and what not? The sexual harassment policy again that they talk about. You agree and they agree that you're going to comply with that. And then, the rules must be uploaded. That's where they deal with that. So the details of what they want. So just make sure that whenever you do house rules, that you cover these items that they are asking for and over and above your other ones that you might have.
Yeah.
Damage or destruction to the premises.
Yeah, so this is a
See, I
very
have lots
standard
of yellow.
clause.
I have lots of yellow items here, so but you go first.
That's fine. So the standard clause is that if your property is if something happens to the leased property and it's completely uninhabitable, then you can't charge the student and the agreement lapses. If it's partly habitable, then the student must stay, but there must be an abatement of rent, so the rental must be reduced. The stick in the mud here is that there is an inspection committee that must come out from NSFAS to have a look at the damage that's been done, and it must be uploaded to the portal. So that's an extra step, but the clause itself is very standard in lease agreements.
So, and again, this is
Yeah.
now the interesting one, is that they say that you can be revoked, but your agreement still remains effective and enforceable until the student finds another place to stay. Does this mean that they must still pay me while the students are there, or can they stop or not?
Yes. No, it's the agreement remains effective. So that means that there will have to be, as between you and the student, still an arrangement.
Okay, but will NSFAS still pay me even though I'm not accredited?
That's not, I would doubt it. It's not clear from this clause, but I would doubt it very
Yeah.
much.
So they don't have to move out, but NSFAS is also not going to pay. So yeah, that is a very interesting one. I think we'll also have to see how that's going to play out. I've never had, well, once we've been accredited, we've never been in a situation where you get unaccredited. It's really just about the management of the property then, and what you do. It's going to be your accreditation to lose almost,
Yes.
I would say.
Yes, absolutely. It's managing your asset.
Mm, definitely. The lessor must give 3 months notice before you're going to sell, and then they must give access to the sale to the people to view, which I think is fine, except that I don't think anybody ever notified NSFAS before when a property was going to get sold. So that is just something new that I think people must know, that they have to give not just the tenant, the student notice, but they must also give NSFAS notice. How exactly? I have no idea. Yeah, just the notices. So your email, so it will be a way for you to notify a student of anything, which is great. So they've included that. Yeah, so I think this is the one that we were talking about, the amendment to the agreement, or the a variation order. No, I don't know what's the right word, but
No,
no
just a variation of the agreement.
There we go. Just the variation document that we were talking about earlier. So we can do a variation, but it must be in writing, signed by both parties, and then we have to communicate it to NSFAS. Again, there's lots of things that they want us to communicate to them, but to be honest, there's an email box that you send things to, and it goes into a big black hole. You don't know, did they get it? Did they not get it?
But
But
the obligation is only to notify, not to get their consent.
okay.
So if you send it to NSFAS and they never reply, you can, as long as you got proof that you sent it, you're fine.
Okay. All right. Well, that's at least a relief, because to get an answer from them is a different story. Confidential information, termination. I think termination for me was also this, in terms of the CPA and whatever else. Is this sort of a standard termination, do you think?
For me, what's interesting is that, yeah, it's pretty standard. It just doesn't expressly allow for any other breach of the agreement. So if the student is breached another element of the agreement, so they don't adhere to the house rules, this termination isn't included. That's not included in the grounds of termination, which is unusual. But the lessee vacating the premises, 13 and 14 we've already dealt with. and 1 month's notice must be given to NSFAS. I think it will be interesting to see what the obligations, how the obligations to terminate the agreement, sorry, not the obligations, the rights of the landlord to terminate the agreement if there is breach of other terms, how that's
Yeah,
going to
because
be dealt with.
yeah, because it doesn't really say that you can terminate almost. It just talks about the student terminating.
No, you terminate. You can terminate in terms of 2.1.1, but your grounds of termination have been limited.
And that is the whole agreement. I think the one that we used before was definitely a lot longer than this one, but more comprehensive. But I think that if people want to change, well, they can't really change this agreement. It is auto-generated. Um, but if there's any, at least there is a way. The good news in all of this is there is a way you can do variations, but it must just be signed by the students, which I think is probably the biggest happy news in all of this, really.
Yeah. And it's like anything, it's a pilot project. Especially your big guys in the industry are going to have a lot to say about it. Um, the principle behind it is so amazing. And it's the implementation that's always tricky. So we'll have to see how that plays out and how the industry reacts to some of these changes. That's going to be really important.
Yeah, I think so too. So as much as anything, as much as all of this is there, nothing has been tested because it is so brand new. And I think over the next few years, we'll really see whether things are going to change, whether it's going to remain the same. And yeah, and it's fun times, and we just roll with it and we continue. The students are still going to come and stay with us. We have to manage them and our properties and our assets, and we carry on. And that's all we can do. And that
Yeah, and
flexibility, I think, is the most important thing in student accommodation.
I think, as I said in the other video, is that when you are putting together your business plan around student accommodation, it's not a matter of just including your rental. It's it's looking at your costs and how many years it'll take to recoup your costs. You've got to get your property ready before you register it. You've got to look at what happens if suddenly a student vacates and you don't have income for that student. You've got to build all of that into your model. And I mean, obviously the big guys do it, but as a warning to kind of your mid-tier and small guys, like you really have to crunch your numbers. It's not enough to just look at income. You've got to look at both expenses and also contingent expenses. So what could happen? So those are the kind of things that I would be hesitant to ignore, because this is a business. It's a business. So you've got to get your ducks in a row for it.
Yeah. Definitely. And, there's no guarantees that NSFAS will pay you, and they're definitely not going to pay you right in the beginning of the year. And I always tell people as well, this is your business, you know, create a budget, make sure you have enough cash flow and you have at least 6 months of expenses in your savings account, just to mitigate all of these things, and plan for vacancies, plan for bad debt, all of that modeling that you need to do. Right,
Yeah,
Robin, thank you so much. Today
you're
was a
welcome,
hectic
Rita.
day with two really difficult topics, but I'm glad I had you with me going through it.
Thanks, Rita, and thanks for having me on
Thank
board.
you.